Imagine a family of 12 brothers, each with a striking personality, living through stories filled with rivalries, betrayals, triumphs, and prophecies that would shape the future of an entire people. This is not just a family saga. It is the foundation of the 12 tribes of Israel, one of the pillars of biblical history and the Judeo-Christian faith. The 12 sons of Jacob are not merely names on a genealogical list. Each carries a deep meaning that resonates both in their lives and in the destiny of their tribes. Reuben, the firstborn, who should have led but loses his position due to an act of dishonor. Judah, who transforms from a calculating brother into the heir of the royal promise. Joseph, the rejected dreamer who becomes the savior of his family. And Benjamin, the youngest and most protected, described as a fierce wolf. Beyond their personal stories, the blessings or curses each receives from their father Jacob serve as enigmatic glimpses into the future, outlining the triumphs and challenges their tribes would face for generations. Behind every word lie lessons of leadership, faith, obedience, and even repentance. What makes this narrative even more fascinating is that it does not involve perfect heroes. These brothers were flawed men, full of envy, weaknesses, and human passions, yet they were chosen to form the foundation of a greater divine plan. If you think you know the story, get ready to delve deeply into a plot full of twists, symbolism, and spiritual meaning that transcends time. Each of Jacob's sons has something to teach, and each prophetic blessing holds a mystery that connects us to the present. Reuben was the first son of Jacob and Leah, his first wife. The name Reuben has a special meaning. See, a son. As recorded in Genesis 29:32, she named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." This name reflects Leah's joy at giving Jacob his first heir, believing it would strengthen the bond between her and her husband, who clearly preferred Rachel, his other wife. From birth, Reuben carried the weight of emotional and familial expectations. As the firstborn, Reuben held special rights and responsibilities. In the cultural and historical context of the time, the firstborn was expected to be the natural leader of the family after the father's death, receiving a double portion of the inheritance and assuming the role of protector for his siblings. However, Reuben failed on several occasions, displaying emotional fragility and poor judgment, which ultimately cost him his privileged position. One of the earliest stories that gives us a glimpse of his personality appears in Genesis 37:21-22, during the episode involving Joseph, his youngest brother. When Joseph's brothers, consumed by envy, planned to kill him, Reuben intervened, saying, "Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." His plan was to save Joseph later and return him to their father. Despite his intention to protect Joseph, Reuben lacked the courage to fully impose his will, allowing his brothers to go through with the plan of selling Joseph into slavery. This hesitation and inability to make firm decisions are mentioned again in the prophetic blessing Jacob gives Reuben at the end of his life, in Genesis 49:3-4. "Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel, for you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it." Here, Jacob acknowledges Reuben's potential as the firstborn, but laments his instability and lack of self-control. The most defining event in Reuben's story, which sealed his disqualification as the firstborn, is recorded in Genesis 35:22. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. This act was a grave offense, both morally and culturally, representing a direct betrayal of Jacob's authority. While the narrative does not provide details on Reuben's motives, the consequence was clear. Reuben lost his leadership position in the family. Reuben appears again in Genesis 42:37 during the famine that forced the brothers to seek food in Egypt, where Joseph had become governor. When Jacob hesitated to allow Benjamin to be taken to Egypt, Reuben tried to guarantee his brother's safety, saying, "You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back." Despite his attempt to show loyalty, the proposal seems desperate and irrational, once again highlighting his emotional instability. Throughout the biblical narrative, Reuben is a tragic figure. He had the qualities expected of a leader: strength, courage, and a prominent position. But his character flaws prevented him from fulfilling this role. His tribe, later on, did not play a prominent role among the 12 tribes of Israel, remaining relatively obscure in biblical history. Reuben's fate reflects the weight of individual choices and their consequences. His story serves as a reminder that potential alone is not enough to ensure success or leadership. Qualities like discipline, emotional control, and integrity are essential. The second son of Jacob and Leah, Simeon, also bears a name full of meaning. The name Simeon comes from the Hebrew word meaning "he has heard," a reference to Leah's declaration in Genesis 29:33. "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too." As with Reuben, the birth of Simeon brought Leah hope of winning Jacob's love, a love that always seemed out of her reach. Simeon's story in the Bible is marked by his impulsive personality and involvement in one of the most violent events in Jacob's family narrative, the massacre of the men of Shechem. In Genesis 34, it is recounted that Dinah, the sister of Simeon and Levi, was violated by Shechem, son of Hamor, the prince of that land. Overcome with love for Dinah, Shechem sought permission to marry her, but Simeon and Levi responded with a deceitful plan. In Genesis 34:13-17, the two brothers proposed that all the men of Shechem undergo circumcision as a condition for the marriage. However, this proposal was not made in good faith. 3 days after the circumcision, while the men of Shechem were still recovering, Simeon and Levi attacked the city and killed all the men, including Shechem and Hamor. This brutal act is described in Genesis 34:25-26. On the third day, when they were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords, went into the unsuspecting city, and killed every male. Simeon and Levi's actions could be seen as defending their sister's honor, but they also constituted extreme vengeance. They not only killed the men of the city, but also looted their possessions and took the women and children as captives. This episode had profound repercussions for Jacob's family. In Genesis 34:30, Jacob harshly rebuked the brothers. "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land." Simeon's impulsiveness, revealed in this event, highlighted a behavioral pattern that influenced the fate of his tribe. Later in Jacob's life, as he blessed his sons, he did not hold back in criticizing Simeon and Levi's anger and violence. In Genesis 49:5-7, Jacob declared, "Simeon and Levi are brothers, their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council, let me not join their assembly. For they have killed men in their anger, and hamstrung oxen as they pleased. Cursed be their anger, so fierce, and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel." These prophetic words pointed to the future of Simeon and Levi and their respective tribes. The tribe of Simeon indeed faced a fate reflecting this dispersal. After settling in Canaan, the portion of land allotted to Simeon was within the region of Judah, Joshua 19:1-9, suggesting that the tribe was gradually assimilated into the Judahites. Over time, Simeon nearly disappeared as a distinct tribe, fulfilling Jacob's prediction. Beyond the massacre at Shechem, Simeon appears in other biblical accounts. One such episode occurs during his brother's journey to Egypt to buy food, where Joseph, now governor of Egypt, recognized them but kept his identity secret. In Genesis 42:24, after accusing the brothers of being spies, Joseph ordered that Simeon be bound and held as a hostage until they returned with Benjamin. This choice may symbolically represent Joseph's retribution for Simeon's role in selling him into slavery, although the text does not explicitly state this motivation. Simeon's story serves as a reminder of the consequences of anger and impulsivity. His life, marked by moments of violence and rash decisions, shaped the destiny of his tribe and underscored the importance of acting with wisdom and emotional restraint. Jacob saw in Simeon the potential of a warrior, but lamented his inability to channel that strength for good. Levi, Jacob's third son with Leah, carries a name reflecting his mother's hope for a closer union with her husband. In Genesis 29:34, Leah says upon naming Levi, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons." This name, meaning joined, symbolizes an expectation that underscores Jacob and Leah's family dynamics while foreshadowing Levi's and his tribe's future role in connecting Israel with God. Levi is first remembered for his participation in the violent episode against the men of Shechem alongside Simeon. The Genesis 34 account portrays Levi as acting with fierce determination, but also with a brutality that tarnished his family's reputation. After this event, Jacob expressed his disapproval, lamenting that their actions had made his family detestable to the land's inhabitants. Genesis 34:30. However, Levi initially seemed to internalize little of this immediate criticism, displaying a rigid and temperamental nature. Over time, it was Levi's tribe, rather than his individual actions, that gained prominence. Unlike Simeon, whose dispersal reflected judgment, Levi's tribe was transformed into a vessel for divine purpose. When Israel received God's law and the tribal organization was established, Levi's lineage was set apart for a sacred mission. This divine choice illustrates the ability to transform even a lineage marked by violence into a channel of spiritual service. A pivotal moment symbolizing this transformation occurs in Numbers 1:47-54, where God commands that the Levites be designated to care for the tabernacle. They were tasked with its transport, assembly, and protection during Israel's wilderness journey. Instead of receiving territorial inheritance like the other tribes, the Levites were given a unique and central role: to live among the tribes and serve as spiritual teachers and priests. This dispersal was not punitive, but an opportunity to sustain God's presence and law throughout Israel. The prominence of Levi's lineage is reinforced by the selection of Aaron, Levi's direct descendant, as Israel's first high priest. In Exodus 28, God instructs Moses to set apart Aaron and his sons for priestly service. From that moment, Levi's lineage was divided into 2 main roles. The priests descended directly from Aaron, responsible for sacrifices and service in the tabernacle, and the broader Levites, who performed auxiliary and educational functions. Another pivotal moment that shapes the history of the Levites is narrated in Numbers 3:5-10, where God sets them apart to replace Israel's firstborn in divine service. This occurs after the deliverance from the final plague in Egypt, when God spared the Israelite firstborn. The symbolic exchange, in which the Levites become representatives of all the firstborn, reinforces their role as those dedicated to God. Although Levi began his story as a character associated with uncontrolled anger, his tribe became an example of zeal for God. During the golden calf incident in Exodus 32, the Levites demonstrated their loyalty when Moses called for those on the Lord's side to step forward. They were the only ones who responded immediately, even when this required taking drastic measures against their own people. This act of obedience was essential in solidifying their role as guardians of Israel's spiritual purity. The tribe of Levi also played a critical role in educating the people. Since they did not receive their own territory, they were distributed among the other tribes to teach God's law and ensure that worship remained centralized and protected from idolatrous influences. This function underscores the meaning of the name Levi, united, as they served as a link between God and Israel. Throughout biblical history, we see that the dispersion of the Levites mentioned by Jacob in Genesis 49:7 was not merely a curse, but a call to higher service. Instead of forming a powerful territorial entity, the tribe of Levi remained united in purpose, scattered among the tribes to preserve worship of God and the teachings of the law. Ultimately, the example of Levi and his tribe serves as a reminder of God's ability to transform mistakes into opportunities for something greater. Though their early history was marked by violence, their lineage became essential to Israel's spiritual identity. This transition demonstrates that even in human failings, there is room for redemption and purpose in God's plan. Judah, Jacob's fourth son with Leah, was given a name that reflects his mother's gratitude to God. In Genesis 29:35, Leah declared, "This time I will praise the Lord." Thus she named him Judah, which means praised. Unlike his older brothers, who were born as part of Leah's efforts to win Jacob's love, Judah seems to have been the result of a shift in Leah's heart, a focus on God rather than on her husband. From the beginning, Judah emerges as a complex figure in the biblical narrative. He is not portrayed as perfect, but throughout his story, he demonstrates growth in both maturity and responsibility. In Genesis 37:26-27, Judah takes a practical approach during the episode involving Joseph. When the brothers plan to kill Joseph, he suggests, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." While selling Joseph was a condemnable act, Judah's suggestion spares his brother's life. This act reveals the beginnings of leadership and practicality, albeit mixed with moral weakness. Later, in Genesis 38, Judah has his own story of mistakes and learning. In this chapter, he separates from his family and marries a Canaanite woman, a union that might signal a departure from his family's values. He has 3 sons with her, but 2 of them, and Onan, are described as wicked in the Lord's sight and die without leaving descendants. After the death of his sons, Judah fails to fulfill his responsibility to give Tamar, his daughter-in-law, in marriage to his 3rd son, Shelah, as was customary. Tamar then takes a bold step to secure her place in Judah's family. She disguises herself as a prostitute and deceives Judah, who sleeps with her. When Judah learns that Tamar is pregnant, he initially orders her to be punished, but changes his position upon realizing his hypocrisy. In Genesis 38:26, he acknowledges, "She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son, Shelah." This episode marks a turning point for Judah, showing that he can recognize his mistakes and correct them, an essential trait for the role he would later assume. Judah's moral growth becomes even more evident during the events surrounding the famine in Canaan and the brothers' journey to Egypt. In Genesis 43:8-9, when Jacob hesitates to send Benjamin to Egypt, it is Judah who offers himself as a guarantee for his brother's safety, saying, "I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life." This moment starkly contrasts with his earlier attitude toward Joseph, showing that he had learned the value of responsibility and family protection. Judah's leadership is solidified during the confrontation with Joseph in Egypt, though the brothers were unaware they were dealing with their own sibling. In Genesis 44:18-34, Judah delivers a heartfelt speech, offering himself as a substitute for Benjamin to spare their father the anguish of losing another son. He says to Joseph, "Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers." This act of self-sacrifice reflects a transformed heart, willing to place others' well-being above his own. When Jacob blesses his sons before his death, Judah receives one of the most remarkable blessings. In Genesis 49, 8-12, Jacob declares, "Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down, like a lioness, who dares to rouse him. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his." This prophetic blessing establishes Judah as a leader among his brothers and the ancestor of a royal lineage. The mention of the scepter and Shiloh points to the messianic promise fulfilled in Jesus Christ, a direct descendant of Judah. The lion imagery associated with Judah also became an enduring symbol of his tribe, emphasizing strength and authority. Judah was not perfect, but his journey is marked by growth, repentance, and a renewed commitment to his family. He emerges as an example of how mistakes can be overcome and how character can be shaped by circumstances. The birth of Dan marks a significant moment in Jacob's family history. Dan was the firstborn of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, who conceived him on her mistress's behalf. In Genesis 36, Rachel declares, "God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son." She named him Dan, meaning judge. The name reflects Rachel's relief in feeling that God was intervening in her rivalry with Leah, even though the child was not biologically hers. The tribe of Dan, descending from this son, carries a history that reflects the duality suggested by the meaning of his name. They acted as instruments of justice, both as judges and warriors, but also posed challenges and dangers to Israel, as foretold by Jacob in his blessing. Jacob's blessing for Dan in Genesis 49, 16-17 is brief yet full of symbolism. Jacob says, "Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a serpent by the roadside, a viper along the path, that bites the horse's heels so that its rider tumbles backward." These words carry multiple interpretations. The role of judge highlights Dan's ability to lead and administer justice, while the comparison to a serpent suggests cunning as well as a potential to cause harm. This ambiguity is evident in the tribe's history. The most notable example of leadership within the tribe of Dan is Samson, a central figure in the Book of Judges. Samson was chosen by God to deliver Israel from the Philistines, who were oppressing the people at the time. In Judges 13, we learn about Samson's miraculous birth, announced by an angel to his mother, who was barren. He was consecrated as a Nazirite, a vow that included rules such as not cutting his hair, abstaining from wine, and avoiding contact with the dead. Samson is remembered for his extraordinary strength, which came from God. For instance, in Judges 14, 5-6, he killed a lion with his bare hands. However, his physical strength contrasted with his moral weakness. He often acted impulsively and made choices that led to difficult situations, particularly in his relationships with women like Delilah. In Judges 16, Delilah betrayed Samson by discovering the secret of his strength, leading to his capture by the Philistines. Even so, at the end of his life, Samson turned to God in one final act of strength and justice, bringing down the Philistine temple and defeating many of Israel's enemies. Samson's story encapsulates the duality of Jacob's blessing over Dan. He was both a judge who brought deliverance to his people and a flawed individual whose weaknesses led to destruction for himself and others. This complexity mirrors the nature of the tribe of Dan as a whole. The tribe of Dan faced difficulties in settling in Canaan. In Joshua 19:40-48, we see that Dan's territorial inheritance was small and surrounded by powerful enemies, including the Philistines. In Judges 18, dissatisfied with their portion of land, the tribe sent spies to seek another region. They eventually migrated to the far north of Israel and took the city of Laish, renaming it Dan. This episode, while demonstrating the tribe's determination, also highlights their tendency to act independently and outside of God's directives. Furthermore, the tribe of Dan played a controversial role in introducing idolatry to Israel. In Judges 18, after conquering Laish, the Danites established an idol there with their own priest, separate from the tabernacle. This decision marked the beginning of a pattern of spiritual unfaithfulness that characterized the tribe throughout history. Another point of reflection about Dan is the tribe's notable absence from the list of tribes in Revelation 7, where 144,000 sealed individuals are mentioned. We cannot know for certain why Dan was omitted, but many scholars speculate that this is related to their association with idolatry and unfaithfulness to God. Even so, the story of Dan is not solely one of failure. It also reminds us of human complexity and the possibility of redemption. Dan is a powerful example of how a lineage can be both an instrument of justice and a potential source of stumbling. Jacob's blessing over Dan acknowledges this duality, pointing to his crucial role as a judge, but also to the dangers inherent in the misuse of power and cunning. Naftali, Jacob's sixth son and the second-born to Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, received a deeply symbolic name. In Genesis 30:8, Rachel declares, "With great struggles I have wrestled with my sister, and I have won." Thus, she named the boy Naftali, meaning "my struggle." Naftali's name reflects the intense rivalry between Rachel and Leah, a recurring theme in Jacob's family history. For Rachel, Naftali's birth through her servant represented a small victory in her quest for affirmation within a complicated family dynamic. Though Naftali is not frequently mentioned in specific narrative events, the tribe descended from him played a significant role in pivotal moments of Israel's history. Jacob's blessing for Naftali in Genesis 49:21 was brief but profoundly revealing. Naftali is a doe set free that bears beautiful words. This poetic and symbolic image captures the essence of Naftali and his tribe, describing them as agile, free, and eloquent, qualities reflected in their legacy. Naftali and his tribe received a territorial inheritance in the northern region of Israel, a fertile and strategic area surrounding the Sea of Galilee. In Joshua 19:32-39, we read about the boundaries of their land, which included areas of great natural beauty and agricultural potential. This location allowed the tribe of Naftali to thrive economically and play a significant role in Israel's trade and military defense. The bravery and agility associated with the tribe of Naftali are evident in events like the battle against Sisera, as narrated in Judges 4. When Deborah, the judge of Israel, called upon Barak to lead the Israelite forces against the army of Jabin, king of Canaan, she instructed him to gather 10,000 men from the tribes of Naftali and Zebulun, Judges 4:6. Naftali's response to this call highlighted their willingness to fight for Israel's freedom. On the battlefield, the tribe displayed courage and skill, contributing to a decisive victory that freed the people from Canaanite oppression. Deborah's song in Judges 5 offers a glimpse into Naftali's heroic role in this battle. In Judges 5:18, Deborah sings, "Zebulun was a people who risked their lives, Naftali too, on the heights of the field." The reference to the heights of the field suggests that Naftali's warriors faced challenging terrain, showing remarkable courage in the face of danger. Beyond their bravery in battle, the tribe of Naftali is often associated with grace and beauty, as indicated in Jacob's blessing. The comparison to a doe evokes the image of a people who are agile, swift, and adaptable. This characteristic is reflected in Naftali's ability to excel in difficult situations, whether in warfare or daily life. Another notable aspect of the tribe of Naftali is their connection to eloquence, mentioned in Jacob's blessing. This quality may be interpreted as a talent for impactful expression or even prophetic ability. Although the biblical texts do not delve deeply into this trait, it suggests a spiritual and communicative potential that complemented the tribe's physical bravery. In later biblical history, Naftali's region played a significant role in the ministry of Jesus Christ. In Isaiah 9:1-2, the prophet mentions the region of Naftali while prophesying the coming of the Messiah. But there will be no more gloom for her who was in anguish. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. This verse is quoted in Matthew 4:15-16, referring to Jesus' ministry in Galilee, which included Naftali's territory. This connects Naftali's heritage to one of the Bible's most significant promises, the manifestation of divine light through Christ. The story of Naftali demonstrates how grace and bravery can coexist. Although the personal narrative of Naftali is limited, the legacy of his tribe leaves a lasting impact on Israel's history. They exemplified freedom, beauty, and strength as reflected in Jacob's blessing, becoming an integral part of both Israel's military defense and spiritual identity. Gad was the first son of Jacob with Zilpah, Leah's servant, and his name carries special meaning. In Genesis 30:11, Leah declares, "What good fortune," and names the boy Gad, meaning good fortune. This name reflects Leah's sense that despite the complicated circumstances of her relationship with Jacob, she continued to be blessed with children. Gad's name not only symbolized luck, but also seemed to foreshadow the destiny of his lineage as a tribe that would thrive amidst challenges and battles. The tribe of Gad inherited land east of the Jordan River in the Transjordan region, as described in Numbers 32. Alongside the tribes of Reuben and half of Manasseh, Gad chose this area due to its extensive pastures, suitable for their large herds. However, the Transjordan was a frontier area, often exposed to enemy attacks. This shaped the Gadites into skilled warriors, renowned for their bravery and defensive prowess. Jacob's blessing for Gad, recorded in Genesis 49:19, reflects the challenging reality faced by the tribe. Gad will be attacked by raiding bands, but he will attack them at their heels. This prophecy highlights Gad's resilience in adversity. Although often under attack, the Gadites were known for their ability to strike back with force and cunning, maintaining their position and surviving the threats they faced. In addition to Jacob's blessing, Moses spoke words over the tribe of Gad in Deuteronomy 33:20-21, emphasizing their military strength and commitment to justice. Moses declares, "Blessed is he who enlarges Gad's domain. Gad lives there like a lion, tearing at arm or head." This description reinforces Gad's image as a fiercely defensive tribe, strategically vital to Israel. The bravery of the tribe of Gad is exemplified in 1 Chronicles 12:8-15, which describes the Gadites as powerful warriors who joined David before he became king. These men were skilled in battle, proficient with shields and spears, and as swift as gazelles on the mountains. Their loyalty and courage made them indispensable allies in David's rise to the throne. One of the remarkable characteristics of the tribe of Gad was their willingness to fight not only for their own security, but also for the unity and well-being of all Israel. Although they received their lands in the Transjordan before the full conquest of Canaan, the Gadites faithfully fulfilled their promise to fight alongside their fellow tribes until all were settled in their inheritances, as seen in Joshua 22. This demonstrates a strong sense of collective responsibility, even while geographically separated from the rest of Israel. Despite their strength and bravery, the location of the tribe of Gad also brought vulnerabilities. Being on Israel's eastern border exposed them to constant attacks from neighboring nations, such as the Ammonites and the Moabites. This strategic position, however, made Gad a sort of first line of defense for the rest of the nation. Their ability to withstand these attacks and retaliate demonstrates the fulfillment of Jacob's blessing, which foretold their resistance against enemy troops. Throughout biblical history, the tribe of Gad exemplifies a balance between strength and service. They were dedicated warriors, renowned for their bravery in battle, but also showed a commitment to the unity of Israel and the preservation of God's people. Their strategic position and military prowess made them an essential component of Israel's tribal landscape. The story of Gad teaches us about the importance of perseverance amid adversity and the value of defending both one's heritage and the community as a whole. Even in the face of constant attacks, the tribe stood firm, adapting and responding with strength and determination. Asher, the second son of Jacob with Zilpah, Leah's servant, was born in a context of celebration and joy. In Genesis 30:13, Leah declares, "How happy I am! The women will call me happy." Thus she named the boy Asher, which means happy or blessed. This name reflects Leah's sense of satisfaction at seeing her family grow. Despite the complex dynamics of her relationship with Jacob, Asher's name becomes a foreshadowing of his future role as a tribe associated with prosperity and abundance. Jacob's blessing for Asher, recorded in Genesis 49:20, is brief yet rich in meaning. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. This prophecy highlights Asher's connection to wealth and prosperity, especially regarding the abundance of food. The tribe's territorial inheritance fulfilled this promise, being located in the northern coastal region of Canaan, a land known for its fertility and exceptional agricultural yields. Asher's geographical location, described in Joshua 19:24-31, included a strip of land stretching from the Mediterranean coast inland, encompassing areas rich in agriculture and fishing. This fertile region allowed the tribe of Asher to be largely self-sufficient and play an important role in supplying food for the rest of Israel. This abundance became a defining feature of the tribe, aligning with Jacob's blessing of abundant bread and royal delicacies. Beyond their connection to material prosperity, the tribe of Asher is also mentioned in Deborah's song in Judges 5. During the battle against Sisera, Deborah praises the tribes that participated in the fight, but also points out the hesitation of others. In Judges 5:17, it is said that Asher remained on the coast and stayed in his coves. This comment suggests that while Asher was in a strategic position and could have contributed militarily, they chose to preserve their security and focus on their economic activities. Despite this hesitance in military conflicts, the tribe of Asher played a significant role in Israel's cultural and economic life. Their ability to produce large quantities of high-quality food was essential to the nation's well-being. The mention of royal delicacies in Jacob's blessing can be interpreted as a reference to providing goods appreciated not only by ordinary people, but also by royalty, reinforcing Asher's importance to Israel's stability and prosperity. The presence of the tribe of Asher is also notable in moments of spiritual restoration. In 2 Chronicles 30:11, during the reign of Hezekiah, we read that some members of the tribe of Asher responded to the king's call to return to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover. This act shows that even in times of spiritual estrangement, there were Asherites seeking to reconnect with God and the worship practices prescribed in the law. In the New Testament narrative, we find another significant mention of the tribe of Asher. Anna, the prophetess who witnessed Jesus' presentation at the temple, was from the tribe of Asher. In Luke 2:36-38, Anna is described as a devout woman who spent much of her life fasting and praying, waiting for the redemption of Israel. This connection between Anna and Asher highlights the tribe's continued role as a source of spiritual blessing, in addition to their material prosperity. Asher's story is a reminder that prosperity and happiness can be used to benefit an entire community. Their abundance of natural resources not only sustained their own tribe, but also contributed to the well-being of the people of Israel as a whole. Jacob's blessing for Asher, associated with abundance and the production of royal delicacies, was fulfilled both in their territorial inheritance and in their contribution to the nation. Issachar was the fifth son of Jacob with Leah and was born under unusual circumstances. In Genesis 30:14-18, we read that Leah conceived Issachar after negotiating with Rachel to spend a night with Jacob in exchange for mandrakes that her son Reuben had found. When Leah gave birth, she declared, "God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband." Thus she named him Issachar, meaning reward. This name reflects both Leah's joy at having another son and her perception that God was responding to her desire to be valued by Jacob. The blessing of Jacob upon Issachar, recorded in Genesis 49:14-15, presents a symbolic description of his tribe. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden and became a servant at forced labor. This imagery highlights the hard-working and resilient character of the tribe of Issachar. The strong donkey symbolizes strength, patience, and a willingness to bear heavy loads. Issachar's readiness to submit to labor became a defining trait of his tribe's history. The territorial inheritance of Issachar, described in Joshua 19:17-23, was located in the fertile Jezreel Valley in northern Israel. Known for its agricultural richness, this region provided Issachar with the resources necessary to sustain its economy based on diligent labor. The combination of fertile lands and a strong work ethic made Issachar a prosperous tribe, though it also left them vulnerable to external pressures. Being situated in the Jezreel Valley placed them along a strategic route, often contested by foreign powers, requiring Issachar to balance their economic strength with occasional submission to dominant nations. Issachar was not only a tribe of diligent workers, but also known for their wisdom and discernment. In 1 Chronicles 12:32, the men of Issachar are described as those who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. This statement underscores Issachar's ability to interpret events and offer strategic guidance. Their wisdom made the tribe a significant source of leadership and counsel during critical moments in Israel's history. An example of Issachar's role in national events is found in Judges 5:15, in Deborah's song, which praises the princes of Issachar for their support during the battle against Sisera. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah. Yes, Issachar was with Barak, sent under his command into the valley. This passage suggests that the tribe of Issachar not only contributed military strength, but also played a leadership role in supporting efforts to liberate Israel from oppression. Furthermore, Issachar played a central role in supporting Israel's religious celebrations. In 1 Chronicles 27:18, we see that they were involved in organizing service rotations for King David. This demonstrates an administrative and spiritual role that complemented their reputation for hard work and discernment. They not only labored to sustain their own tribe, but also contributed to the cohesion and functioning of Israel as a whole. Moses' prophecy about Issachar in Deuteronomy 33:18-19 reinforces their connection to the land and their willingness to sacrifice. Moses declares, "Rejoice, Issachar, in your tents. They shall call the peoples to the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall partake of the abundance of the seas and the treasures hidden in the sand." This blessing combines spiritual and material aspects, highlighting Issachar's ability to draw others to worship God and enjoy the natural wealth of their land. The story of Issachar teaches us the value of diligent work and sacrifice for the benefit of a larger community. Despite the external challenges they faced, the tribe demonstrated the importance of resilience and strategic wisdom. Jacob's description of Issachar as a strong donkey was not an insult, but a celebration of their strength and patience, qualities that became hallmarks of their lineage. Zebulun, the sixth son of Jacob and Leah, received a name reflecting his mother's hope for a deeper bond with Jacob. In Genesis 30:20, Leah declares, "God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him 6 sons." She named him Zebulun, meaning dwelling, symbolizing the desire for stability and permanence. Interestingly, this name also became prophetic for the destiny of his tribe, which would have a strong connection to commerce and proximity to the waters. In Jacob's blessing in Genesis 49:13, Zebulun is described with these words, "Zebulun shall dwell by the seashore and shall be a haven for ships. His border shall extend toward Sidon." This prophecy associates the tribe of Zebulun with maritime trade and proximity to trade routes. Although the land allocated to Zebulun in Joshua 19:10-16 was not directly on the coast, the region was close enough to establish commercial connections with coastal cities like Acre and even Sidon, mentioned in the blessing. Zebulun's strategic location between the Sea of Galilee and the northern plains of Canaan made their land a natural trade route. This allowed the tribe to thrive as intermediaries between regions, transporting goods from one area to another. Jacob's blessing, therefore, reflects Zebulun's role as a facilitator of trade and connectivity in Israel. Their position not only fostered internal commerce, but also opened doors for exchanges with neighboring nations. In Deuteronomy 33:18-19, Moses blesses Zebulun with words that emphasize their joy and willingness to draw others to worship God. "Rejoice, Zebulun, in your journeys, and you, Issachar, in your tents. They shall call peoples to the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall draw from the abundance of the seas and the hidden treasures of the sand." This blessing reinforces the idea of Zebulun as a tribe that benefited from the riches of the sea and played a key role in worshiping God. Their material prosperity and willingness to invite others to worship highlighted their hospitable character and integration of work and spirituality. The tribe of Zebulun played a significant role during times of military crisis. In Judges 4, when Deborah and Barak summoned the people to fight against Sisera, Zebulun was one of the tribes that answered the call. In Judges 5:18, Deborah's song states, "Zebulun is a people who risked their lives to the death." This illustrates that in addition to their association with trade and maritime routes, the tribe of Zebulun was willing to fight in defense of Israel when needed, demonstrating a balance between economic prosperity and military duty. Another remarkable moment involving Zebulun is found in 1 Chronicles 12:33, where the men of Zebulun are described as experienced in all weapons of war, prepared for battle with undivided heart. They joined David in Hebron, showing their loyalty and readiness to support the unification of Israel under a single king. This reference reinforces the idea that Zebulun was both an economic and military force, contributing to the stability of the Kingdom of Israel. Zebulun's prosperity and connection to trade are often associated with the positive impact they had on Israel as a whole. Their strategic position not only allowed for internal economic growth, but also served as a bridge to the outside world, an essential advantage for a nation often surrounded by enemies. However, Zebulun's economic success may also have posed a spiritual risk, especially in a world where trade with other nations could introduce potentially harmful cultural and religious influences. Zebulun is one of the few tribes mentioned as being present during moments of spiritual restoration, particularly during the Passover celebrations in Hezekiah's reign, as described in 2 Chronicles 30. Although some northern tribes had distanced themselves from worshipping God, members of Zebulun responded to Hezekiah's call to return to Jerusalem and celebrate Passover. This demonstrates that even in times of spiritual dispersion, there were those in Zebulun who sought to remain faithful. The story of Zebulun highlights the importance of seizing opportunities, whether in trade, warfare, or worship. Their blessing and geographical position made them essential to Israel's material sustenance and stability. Zebulun's narrative also teaches about balancing work, prosperity, and loyalty to God. Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, was the firstborn of Rachel, the wife Jacob loved most. The name Joseph, meaning he adds, was given by Rachel as an expression of her hope and gratitude. In Genesis 30:24, Rachel declared, "May the Lord add to me another son." Joseph's birth marked a moment of special joy for Rachel, who had struggled with barrenness while watching Leah bear many children. From a young age, Joseph was clearly favored by his father, Jacob, who regarded him as the son of his old age and of his beloved Rachel. In Genesis 37:3, we read that Jacob loved Joseph more than all his sons and gave him a richly ornamented robe, a symbol of distinction and privilege. This favoritism, however, stirred envy and resentment among his brothers, creating tension that would lead to dramatic events. Joseph's story is marked by his prophetic dreams, which play a pivotal role in his journey. In Genesis 37:5-11, Joseph shares two dreams with his family. In the first, he sees bundles of grain in a field, and his brothers' bundles bow to his. In the second, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bow before him. These dreams, which symbolized his future elevation over his brothers and even his parents, intensified their anger and jealousy. This resentment led Joseph's brothers to conspire against him. In Genesis 37:18-28, they initially planned to kill him, but ultimately sold him as a slave to Midianite merchants, who took him to Egypt. There, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Despite being unjustly torn from his family and taken to a foreign land, the narrative emphasizes that the Lord was with Joseph, Genesis 39:2, and he prospered even under adverse circumstances. While serving in Potiphar's house, Joseph faced a severe trial. Potiphar's wife repeatedly attempted to seduce him, but Joseph steadfastly refused, demonstrating his faithfulness to God and his moral integrity. In Genesis 39:9, he declares, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Because of his rejection, he was falsely accused and imprisoned. Yet even in prison, Joseph found favor as God continued to be with him, and he was placed in charge of the other prisoners. The turning point in Joseph's story comes when he interprets the dreams of two of Pharaoh's servants who were imprisoned. In Genesis 40, Joseph reveals that the chief cupbearer would be restored to his position and asks him to remember Joseph upon his release. 2 years later, Pharaoh had two troubling dreams that no one could interpret. The cupbearer then remembered Joseph, who was brought before Pharaoh. In Genesis 41:16, Joseph humbly states, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams as a divine revelation of 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. He advises Pharaoh to implement a resource management plan, impressing him to the point of appointing Joseph as governor of Egypt. In Genesis 41:41, Pharaoh declares, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Thus Joseph, the young man sold into slavery, became the second most powerful person in Egypt. The famine Joseph predicted brought his brothers to Egypt in search of food, unaware they were standing before the brother they had sold into slavery. The encounters between Joseph and his brothers, described in Genesis 42:45, are filled with emotion, forgiveness, and restoration. Joseph tests his brothers to see if they had changed, and when he perceives their transformation, he reveals his identity through tears. In Genesis 45:5, he declares, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Jacob's blessing to Joseph in Genesis 49:22-26 reflects the course of his life. Jacob describes him as a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over a wall, symbolizing the abundance and blessings that flowed through Joseph. Jacob also acknowledges that Joseph faced great adversity, but that God's hand remained with him, granting him strength and prosperity. Joseph serves as an extraordinary example of resilience, faith, and loyalty to God, even in the worst of circumstances. His story highlights God's sovereignty in turning evil into good, using even the most adverse situations to fulfill his plan. Benjamin, Jacob's 12th and youngest son, was born under circumstances that mingled joy and sorrow. Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife, gave birth to Benjamin while traveling from Bethel to Ephrath, later known as Bethlehem. However, during childbirth, Rachel suffered fatal complications. Before dying, she named her son Benoni, meaning son of my sorrow. Jacob, however, renamed him Benjamin, meaning son of my right hand, a title that carries honor and strength. In Genesis 35:18, we read about this moment of loss and redemption. As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Benoni, but his father named him Benjamin. Benjamin's story is deeply marked by Jacob's love and protection, as he saw him as a constant reminder of Rachel. As the youngest son, Benjamin was treated with extreme care, especially after the disappearance of Joseph, whom Jacob believed to be dead. In Genesis 42:4, we see Jacob initially refusing to send Benjamin with his brothers to Egypt to buy food, fearing he might lose his youngest son. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others because he was afraid that harm might come to him. This special protection reflects Benjamin's unique role within the family. Jacob's blessing to Benjamin in Genesis 49:27 describes him as a ravenous wolf. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, in the evening he divides the plunder. This powerful imagery symbolizes the strength, ferocity, and determination of the tribe of Benjamin. Though small in number, the tribe played a significant role in several of Israel's battles, demonstrating courage and military skill. The symbolism of the wolf also points to a warrior spirit, capable of facing formidable adversaries and prevailing. The tribe of Benjamin received its territorial inheritance in the central region of Israel, a strategic area that included Jerusalem and adjacent lands, as described in Joshua 18:11-28. This central location highlighted Benjamin's importance both in defending Israel's territory and in the kingdom's politics. Despite its small size, Benjamin's position made it crucial to the cohesion of the Israelite tribes. One of the most notable episodes involving the tribe of Benjamin occurs in Judges 19-21, a dark chapter in Israel's history. After a heinous crime committed by men of the tribe in Gibeah, the other Israelite tribes united to demand justice. When the Benjamites refused to hand over the guilty men, a civil war ensued. Although the tribe of Benjamin was nearly wiped out, it survived and rebuilt. This episode underscores both the strength and the challenges faced by the tribe throughout its history. Benjamin is also associated with prominent biblical figures. Israel's first king, Saul, was from the tribe of Benjamin. In 1 Samuel 9:1-2, Saul is described as an impressive man, chosen by God to lead Israel. Though his reign had its ups and downs, the selection of a Benjamite as king emphasized the tribe's importance at the start of Israel's monarchy. In the New Testament, another Benjamite stands out, the Apostle Paul. In Romans 11:1, Paul writes, "I am an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin." As one of Christianity's greatest evangelists, Paul represents the connection between the tribe of Benjamin and the fulfillment of God's promises in Christ. His determination, courage, and zeal reflect the characteristics attributed to the tribe of Benjamin. Beyond its association with prominent figures, the tribe of Benjamin played a crucial role in unifying the kingdom of Israel. After the kingdom split into Israel and Judah, Benjamin remained loyal to the Davidic lineage, joining Judah to form the southern kingdom. This strategic alliance ensured Jerusalem's continuity as the spiritual and political center of Israel. The story of Benjamin teaches us about resilience and purpose. Despite adversity, the tribe prospered and significantly influenced Israel's history. Jacob's description of Benjamin as a ravenous wolf reflects the tribe's ability to face challenges with determination and strength. With Benjamin's story, we reach the end of the narrative of Jacob's 12 sons. Each played a unique role in shaping the 12 tribes of Israel, leaving a legacy intertwined with God's history and plans for his people, and, through them, for all humanity. The journey of Jacob's sons is a testimony to God's sovereignty in transforming lives and circumstances into vital parts of his eternal promise. If you enjoyed this video and believe it can inspire others, don't forget to like and share it with your friends and family. Your support helps our content reach even more people who are eager to learn and grow spiritually. And of course, to keep following such rich themes, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. This way, you'll be notified whenever new content is released. We're preparing much more about the Bible, historical characters, and the incredible lessons it teaches us. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. May the message of each of Jacob's sons inspire your life and remind you that God has a unique and special purpose for each of us. See you in the next video.